Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of How to Avalanche at Home. My name is Burke, I'm a technology enthusiast, and with this series my goal is to cover various options of how you can install and run an Avalanche node. With the first episode, I'm going to cover how you can install a virtual machine onto a Windows or Mac OS desktop, and how you can use this virtual machine to get Avalanche, install it, and run a node. Now, I know a lot of you out there do get intimidated by jargon like blockchain, virtual machine, etc. I promise you the whole purpose of this video is to make it simple, easy, and overall a breeze to install a virtual machine, get the necessary software pieces in place, and run an Avalanche node. Now, before we begin, I'd like to point this out. Obviously, if you like this video, please go ahead and press the like button so I know that this is useful for you. And otherwise, if you have any feedback, whether it's good, whether it's bad, or whether it's downright ugly about something I'm doing in the video or something I'm saying in the video, please, by all means, put it in the comments so that I know what I can do better and I know what I need to continue doing. All right, let's start with a couple of definitions. What is Avalanche? Avalanche is a third-generation blockchain technology that actually promises to solve some of the key challenges that the first generation, Bitcoin, and second generation, Ethereum, and everything that came since then couldn't actually solve. By design, these previous generations had key challenges around throughput, energy efficiency, etc. And the very cool thing about Avalanche is the underlying consensus technology that it uses promises to solve the speed problem, the throughput problem, and most importantly, energy efficiency and inclusion aspects. Obviously, this video is not intended to talk a lot about Avalanche. Obviously, talking about Avalanche requires a full-blown video of its own. If you're interested in finding more about how it works, please check out some of the material I'm going to be placing in the information section of this video, and you can learn about it using those links. All right, next up, what is a node? A node is effectively the piece of software that once you install it on a dedicated hardware like Raspberry Pi or on your desktop or wherever, it's the piece of software that allows you to be part of the network and contribute to the network. Now, the node is the collection of actions, if you will, that allows you to interact with the network and do various things, but most importantly, it is a piece of software that allows you to stake and do the validations necessary for this network to operate. Another simple way to think about what the node is if you're familiar with miners in Bitcoin, the node in Avalanche performs the same operations that are equivalent to what the miners did in Bitcoin or Ethereum. All right, next up, what is a virtual machine? A virtual machine is a mini computer running virtually inside of another physical computer. You know, a simple example to describe this could be picture-in-picture features that TVs have today, where you may be watching a movie in the general screen, but on the lower right corner, you may have a sports event that you really want to know the score of that's, showing up on the lower right. Virtual machines are very much like that. So for example, if you have a Windows desktop that's running natively on the hardware that you have, you can still install Linux without needing to acquire another computer and run it in a virtual machine where it shares some of the resources of your existing hardware and runs without causing Windows to be deleted or be non-operational. All right, let's talk about what's in store for you for the rest of this video. First, I'm going to show you how you can download Oracle VirtualBox, which is the VirtualBox container that I chose to use as a part of this video. Second, I'm going to show you how you can download an appropriate Ubuntu image and then hook it up inside of the VirtualBox software. And then lastly, and most importantly, I'm going to show you how, once you have Linux, how you can actually install the necessary components and run an Avalanche node. All right, guys, I'd say that's enough talk. Let's jump right into the instructions. All right, so let's first start with navigating to virtualbox.org. That's where we will download the VirtualBox application. Click the big blue button to download and then choose the appropriate OS that you have. For me, it's Windows. The reason why I chose VirtualBox over other alternatives is because VirtualBox is free, extremely easy to use, backed by a reputable brand that everybody recognizes, and then it was just overall, super easy to get. So I'm going to click the downloaded file. It's going to launch the installer. I'm going to click next. I pretty much want the defaults. The only thing that I don't want is I'm going to remove the start menu and the quick launch shortcut, and then it will tell me that it will briefly disconnect the internet, which is fine, and then I'm going to go ahead and install it. Now, while this application won't take that long to install, as I mentioned earlier, the next thing we're going to need to do once this application is installed and ready to go is go ahead and download Ubuntu. As you can see, the installation already finished. Let's go ahead and launch it and see what the application actually looks like. All right, as you can see, VirtualBox Manager has just launched. This is where we're going to create our virtual machines. But first, as I mentioned earlier, we need to download Ubuntu. So I'm going to go back to my browser. I'm going to navigate to ubuntu.com. On there, I'm going to click the downloads. And then for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to use the desktop version, which is a little bit more user-friendly. But of course, because we have a GUI, it's going to be slower. But again, for the purpose of this demo, it should be fine. I'm going to click download. And then it will start the download right there. It will take a few minutes. For the purposes of this demo, I'm actually going to go ahead and speed this part up. All right, so we just finished downloading Ubuntu. I'm going to go back to my VirtualBox Manager. I'm going to click New, which will create the new container for us, basically. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to name it Avalanche Node VM. I need to change the location of where this virtual machine lives because it's going to be a large file. I'm going to go ahead and go into the D directory. I'm going to say VM, and I'm going to choose this as my folder where it should live. The type needs to be Linux, and the flavor or the version needs to be Ubuntu 64-bit. Now, the quick start tutorial says at least 2 gigabytes of RAM. As you can see, my current computer has 16 gigabytes of RAM, so I'm going to give half of it to the virtual machine just to make it nice and round. And then I'm going to leave everything as default, and I'm going to click Create. Now, when I do this, the last question that VirtualBox is going to ask me is how much of a hard drive I want. Again, quick start tutorial suggests 10 gigs. Again, I'm going to make it nice and easy, and I'm going to choose 50, leave the rest of the defaults, and click Create. When I do this, it will actually create the container that Ubuntu and effectively Avalanche is going to run in. Now, when we first launch it, it's going to ask me where the installation ISO is. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's click Start so that it launches this device. And initially, it's asking me for a startup disk that, as you can see, it's left at empty. So I'm going to click this choose an optical drive option. Then I'm going to click Add. And this is the file that we downloaded. I had already moved it to a separate location in Images. I'm going to click Open. That's actually going to now associate that image as an optical disk for the purposes of this application. Then I'm going to choose it. And as you can see, it is now populated. When I click Start, that's actually going to start from that image inside of this virtual container. Now, it will take a minute or two to get to the initial screen. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to speed this part as well as many other parts, particularly during the installation. All right, so our virtual disk has launched now. It has loaded, and now we are in the installation section. This is where we are actually going to install Ubuntu into the virtual machine that we created. And let's go ahead and do it. Choose English. If you have a different language, you can go ahead and do that. Click Install Ubuntu. Then it's going to ask you, what type of keyboard you have. I'm just going to continue. I want a normal installation, and I don't want it to download updates while I'm installing Ubuntu. There's no need for that. I'm going to click continue. All right, this will take another second or so. All right here. Basically, it's asking me the installation type. The first option says, go ahead and erase the disk and install Ubuntu. Obviously, because we are installing everything into a virtual container, this is perfectly fine. I'm going to click install now. It's going to ask me again that everything is going to be deleted. It's fine, we're in a container. So if you click continue, it's going to ask you your time zone. It thinks I'm in New York, so be it. Again, click continue. And this is the important part. It's going to ask you for your name. I'm going to call it demo account. The computer's name, you can leave it as is. The username needs to be picked and you need to choose a password. And I typically select login automatically just because, this is, again, for the purposes of the demo. I want it to log in quickly, and that's pretty much it. Once you select continue, it should actually start copying files over. And again, in the interest of keeping this video short and sweet, I'm going to speed up this part, and we're going to get to the point where the installation actually finishes and we are ready to use Ubuntu. All right, so the installation is now complete. It's asking us to restart the device. So I'm gonna go ahead and click restart. Again, the restart, particularly the first launch after installation, will take a little while. First, it's going to ask for you to remove the installation media. You can simply press enter because, again, we are in a VirtualBox environment. We had selected automatic login. So at this point, what I'm expecting is for the virtual machine to launch, automatically log me in, and I should have the Ubuntu GUI window. Now, for the purposes of this demo, obviously this VirtualBox is running in a smaller window. I'm actually going to go ahead and make this a little bit larger as soon as it launches, so that you can observe everything I'm doing a little bit better. Again, for the purposes of this video, I'm actually going to speed up the first launch so that you actually get to see it quicker. All right, now that our Ubuntu installation has restarted, we are logged in and we are ready to start doing the Avalanche related installations. So when you first log in, it's actually going to give you a window about connecting your online accounts. You can skip it. Live patch also doesn't matter for the purposes of this demo and what we're trying to do. I'm not going to help Ubuntu. Again, this is a virtual machine. I don't know how long I'll keep it around. And then lastly, there's a bit about location services. Again, for the purposes of running a node inside of a virtual machine, we don't need it. That's pretty much it. So the first thing that I will actually do is I'm going to make this window larger for our purposes. So I'm going to right-click the empty area, then click Display Settings, which will bring me this window. I'm going to choose 1680 by 1050. It's the more appropriate setting for my window. Obviously, choose whatever works for you best. Then I'm going to go into the VirtualBox Manager's window and I'm going to make it full screen. That's actually going to give us sort of the best view. The other window that popped up in the meantime is a software updater. We really don't need it, so I'm going to kill that for the time being. All right, so we can go ahead and start looking into the quick start tutorial for Avalanche. We basically are ready to use Ubuntu. So I'm going to launch Firefox first. It's going to give me a few notices, but I will go to avalabs.org. When you navigate to the web page, it will actually have a link to get started. And if you click on it, it's going to take us to the tutorial that the Avalabs team created, which is quite comprehensive about what you need to do to get a node up. So, the first bit talks about requirements. We covered this a little bit when we were creating our virtual machine. The piece of software that you need to be able to run the application is Go, and there is a link to the Go webpage. If you click on it, it's actually going to take you to the location where you can download Go. And I'm going to click the link and I will actually download the Go file. So I'll choose Save File, say OK. And this will actually download the file. If I click the folder, you can see that the file is downloaded, and the file actually is a compressed file. So I'm going to right click on this terminal, or rather on this window, and I'm going to click Open in Terminal. That will actually give me a terminal where the file, if I list it, is actually right there. This is the file that we downloaded. Now, when I go back to this web page, it also gives me the instruction to install Go. So I'm going to select it, right click, copy, go back to the terminal, and I will paste it. Now, one nuance here, because we are not the root user, because we are using the account that we created, which is a demo account, I actually have to put sudo in front of this command so that I execute this command with elevated privileges. When I press enter, it's going to ask me for my password. I'm going to enter it. And at this point, it should be installing Go. If you get a silent installation like this, that is exactly what we're looking for. That means it succeeded. And we just need to make some changes to our user account so that our Go install will work. So I'm going to maximize this page. Then I'm going to go to my home directory by doing cd space tilde. Again, if I list the contents, there is a bashrc file. I'm going to go ahead and make some changes inside this bashrc file so that my shell environment, when I launch Avalanche, knows of certain variables and what they point to. So to do that, I'm going to use Nano, which is a built-in text editor for Ubuntu, which will open the file up. Then I'm basically going to go all the way to the bottom by pressing page down, and I will go ahead and enter three things in here. The first one we want is a go root variable, which will point to where we installed Go. The second one is go path. This is the location where, when we download stuff, for example, when we download the Avalanche source code, where these things are going to live. Go path points to that. And then lastly, I'm going to update my default system path to include the go root and go path. Go root /bin. And then I will also do, whoops, I need a colon. Yep, go path bin. These are actually required so that your shell itself can find Go when you type Go, which is the first variable, and the path update is going to give us. So make sure you do these. To save the file, I'm going to have to do Control-O. Then it's going to ask me what file to write. It's .bashrc, so I'm going to press enter. Then when I do Control-X, it will let me exit this window. Now, if I actually type, so before doing that actually, right now if you do Go version, it's not going to recognize it because we haven't resourced this file. If I type bash and restart my shell and type Go version, now it's going to tell me that Go is actually correctly installed. Okay? At this point, we are ready to just install the other dependencies associated with what we're going to do. Just to summarize, we're going to download the source code of Avalanche, build it, and then we're going to launch the node. It's really simple from this point on. The two things that we're going to need to be able to download the source code and build it is first Git. Git is a source management application. When I press Git, or when I type and press enter, it tells me that it's not installed, but it's actually kind enough to tell me what command I need to use to install it. I'm gonna say sudo apt-get install. It's going to ask me, do you really want it? I obviously do. So I'm going to press Y and enter. And that should install Git. Git is a small application, like I said, that simply manages source files. It will take another second or so to finish installing, and that's it. We now have Git. The second tool that I need is GCC. GCC basically takes the code, builds it into an executable application. Again, because we're downloading the source code from the Avalanche repo, GCC is required. Here is the command one more time. I'm going to copy it and paste it. Again, it's going to ask me, do you really want this? As I said, we absolutely do. We're going to let the installation finish. And from this point on, it's just going to be a matter of downloading the Avalanche source code, building it, and launching it. Now we have git installed. If you type git and enter, it will actually give you the help commands. Same thing with GCC. If you type GCC and press enter, it will actually give you an error from the GCC application saying, hey, I didn't even find files. What am I supposed to build? That is pretty much it. Now, the next step is to actually download the Go repo files. To do that, you simply, Avalanche repo files, not Go. You use the command go get -v -d github.com avalabs avalanche go ... This, by the way, if you actually look at the quick start tutorial, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. If we go back to the quick start tutorial, this is exactly what it's telling you to do. This is the command that I'm running. And when I press enter, the Go application will use the Git application that we recently installed. It's going to do a few things, and it will actually download the files from the GitHub repository that the Avalabs team is actually maintaining. Now, the cool thing about this is, as you know, Avalanche is open source. What we're doing right now is we're downloading all of the source code that is powering, the protocol, and everything that the node itself is. All of the functions, all of the cool things is actually in this code. If you actually wanted to learn a little bit more about Avalanche, you can just as easily learn the Go language and simply read the code that you're downloading right now. In other words, what we're doing right now is we're putting the source code on Avalanche into this virtual machine. As you can see, we just downloaded. If you actually change your directory to Go, source, github.com, avalabs, avalanche go, and scripts, and press enter, we are now in the scripts directory. If you do a list, there is a lot of scripts in here. The script that we're interested in right now is going to be the build script, build.shell. And when I run it, it's going to take the source code that we downloaded, it's going to take GCC that we installed recently, and it's going to start building the application so that we can launch it. This process may take anywhere from a minute to a couple minutes. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to go ahead and speed it up. All right, as you can see, our build has completed. By the way, depending on your version, etc., the build script output may look different. The first time you build, you'll probably get more messages than this. For me, it's not the first build, but ultimately you're looking for this build successful message at the end of your run for the build.shell. Now, to launch the node from this point on, it's quite easy. You simply need to change your directory. You can do this by cd:/build. That's actually going to bring us into the build directory. If I list the contents, then I'm going to see the Avalanche Go executable. And to launch it, I simply need to do /avalanche go. When I press enter, this actually will launch our node, and our node should initialize and it should start bootstrapping. Because we're running in a virtual machine, this error doesn't really matter. It is simply telling us that you may not be listening. It may require some additional settings, but really the process still applies. And as you can see, we have already connected to the Bootstrap node, and we have started bootstrapping the P chain. From this point on, you actually have the node, and once it finishes bootstrapping, you can start playing around and interacting with your node. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. Now you have a sandbox inside which you have an Avalanche node, and it's bootstrapping. Congratulations. Hopefully you've been with me this far, and I appreciate you watching this video. The one and only thing that I'm going to leave you with is, please, if you have any comments, whether I did something well, whether I did something bad, or whether you want me to do some new discussions, new topics, please put them in the comments. If otherwise you have been satisfied with the video and this actually helped you, please go ahead and like the video, and also don't forget to subscribe so that you can be made aware every time we launch additional videos. I have many other topics that I'm planning to cover in the near future, so subscribing will let you know when those videos drop. Otherwise, I'm going to leave you with your node, and thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.